Phone was going to close.
Oh, you're going to mention the book?
I am. Ask me that again.
Are you going to mention the book?
Yeah, I'm going to mention the books. So, ask me again. Coming up, the rise of principle-based media buying.
CNBC launch an in-house agency.
And finally, the launch of a new global independent media network, which is privately owned. Hello and welcome to IDCOM's Media Snack, episode 21. So, 3 really interesting topics today. We're going to report on a brilliant piece written in the US trade press in AdAge, which for the first time puts down a marker on principle-based media buying, and we'll explain what that is and perhaps some of the implications and questions that it might raise at marketers.
CNBC have launched an in-house agency called Catalyst.
Mm-hmm. And they're launching a new marketing TV show, which is very exciting. Yeah. And finally, we bring news of the unveiling of a new media agency global network, which has popped up out of the blue, which it sounds like a really good idea. Privately owned, which I think is going to be a real differentiator potentially for their success.
Which is good for the industry, absolutely.
Yeah. All coming up on today's IDCOM's Media Snack in just the time it takes to eat a sandwich. And I nearly forgot to say that. Okay, first up today, quite a big topic actually. We're talking about principle-based media buying on the back of a piece written by Alexandra Bruell in AdAge, which is really interesting, caught our eye, and it seems to be catching the interest of various different people around the world now.
So what is principle-based buying? I mean, are we adding more complexity to an already complex marketplace?
Absolutely. Always need more complexity, right? So principle-based buying is just talking about the role that the agency plays in a contractual relationship with their client and then with the media vendor. And the idea being is that if you're principal in the contract, you basically take the risk, okay? So it's stuff that agencies have been doing for a while. We're familiar with it in the UK in principle, LE, in the form of share deals and things like that, which are kind of upfront commitments of volume. That's right, yeah. But those are in principle commitments, not actually necessarily pre-buying inventory. What's going on in the US now, and it's nascent, but it's fast growing. And it's been around for a little while, and it's brilliant that Alexandra has now raised this in a big way in AdAge, because it really rises and brings it to attention. Is that there are some of the media agency groups are now pre-buying, not just committing to buy at some point in the future a share, but actually buying media inventory in advance, sometimes repackaging that, and then selling that on. So this is what has been called brokering media or arbitrage of media. And so the agencies, this is a US story, are increasingly taking that position. It's still quite small, 5-10% of the market, but that's still a lot of money. The implications it has, of course, is that the agency takes the risk, and as a client, you are being asked to forego transparency on the cost of that media that the agency actually acquired it for, because they're just reselling it to you like a broker, and also the fees involved.
On the assumption that you're getting, as a client, really competitive, really low media prices, right?
Well, it's a way, I mean, if you think about, it's a way that agencies, who they're claiming that they're under obviously increasing pressure to deliver lower and lower costs. So that's something that we hear quite a lot. And so they're saying that this is a result of that. And so they can go to a media vendor, take a huge position on media inventory, buy things at a huge discount, use their leverage to negotiate ever cheaper prices, package that up, and then still sell it to a client cheaper.
But with massive margins.
With potentially unlimited margins, because you can sell stuff for whatever client's prepared to pay for it. And there's no disclosure required as to how they acquired that media. whether they paid anything for it, frankly, or whether it was part of some other reciprocal deal.
So it's interesting, I think, in terms of the way that the agency groups are organising themselves to see which direction they're going.
Yeah.
You know, Brian Lesser, who was leading Xaxis, is now key principal within Group N.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's, you know, through Xaxis, he's an experienced principle-based media buyer.
That's right.
Now running Group M, which sends, I think, to us a clear signal of Group M's intentions in that space, is that they're very much focused perhaps on a future of, you know, brokered media or principle-based buying. And we've seen, again, the same Scott Hagedorn, who was the equivalent at Omnicom in their unit, Analect. Scott has just been put in charge of, is it Hearts and Science?
Yeah,
The new the new Omnicom media agency that they created on the back of the P&G win. So I mean, he's running the agency, as is Brian. That, I think, tells us that you've got two big agents, two of the biggest agencies in the US.
Where the bets are going, right?
Yeah.
But as a client, how can I be certain that the thinking, the strategy in my planning is objective and neutral?
Yeah.
If I'm being sold big chunks of media inventory that the agency needs to shift.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the problem, right? Is that agencies will then have if they're taking these positions, they'll have a vested interest, of course, in selling you specific types of media. So it does call into question then the neutrality or the objectivity of their planning when they've already got a whole ton of media inventory that they've taken a risk on, right? They've got to sell it, otherwise they lose money now. So it does make in that scenario, it makes a bit of a mockery, the idea that you would pay an agency any kind of fee for strategy and planning when the outcome is largely predetermined based on what they have to sell.
But as a client, I can see the benefit of that. Yeah. If all I want from my media agency is the delivery of really cheap media inventory, right? And I don't care how they make their money within that. I have no desire to have any transparency within that trading position.
Yeah.
All I want is cheap media inventory.
Yeah.
If, however, I want my...
But also related to an outcome. Do you know what I mean? So if it's okay to buy in that fashion if you're really clear that it drives a particular outcome for your business, then you might go, you know what, I don't care. I don't care what you bought it for. I don't care actually what it costs.
As long as it's working.
As long as we can show that it's doing something. So it seems perfectly legitimate, a legitimate way of doing things.
But if I want my agency to be my advisor, my strategic leader, right? That's not going to work.
No.
So how can can the two options live together, conveniently, or do the agencies have to decide whether they're going to be a principal buyer of media inventory or a strategic advisor to their clients? Yeah. Can the two of them cohabitate?
Well, I think agencies are betting on being able to be all of these things. But I think what was so good about Alex's piece in AdAge, and we'll link to it, please read it. So we've been sharing it, saying if you invest in media, you need to read this just to understand what's going on. The great thing about Alex's piece is it starts, I think it will be quite a watershed moment, hopefully, because it will create this discussion and debate. But it's going to require agencies, I think, eventually, hopefully with marketers' pressure, to decide one way or the other, what are they going to be? I was at a dinner last night and we were talking about this exact issue, and agency groups seem to think that they can, part of the group could be doing one bit and part could be doing the other bit, the strategic trusted advisor. I think that's a real challenge. Yeah. It's going to be a real challenge for them.
Especially, at the moment, they can work within both, right? Because the arbitrage, the principal buying piece is still relatively low. So 5, 10, maybe even maximum 15% of the inventory being delivered is managed this way. But as that becomes higher and you get to a critical mass, there has to be a decision made, right? You can't be both.
No.
Because one compromises the other.
They would corrupt each other. And you could argue that they perhaps are doing that now. There are, and there have been. I mean, we've been talking about this for I don't know, maybe 10 years. Does a media agency's buying position compromise the objectivity of their planning? And so, who knows? As this rolls out, we expect at some point, and that's why this, now this kind of watershed perhaps moment with this piece coming out, is that it might be the beginning of this separation, a real delineation between a side of the industry which is principle-based brokered buying with no or little transparency, and the only thing you can really gamble on as a marketer is that it's going to drive some outcome, and you might be happy with that. Or you view media in a slightly different way, with a more strategic way, and you require transparency of what's happening to your money, what you're buying, and you want to impose really better governance over that company investment, and make the process more accountable, in which case you're going to need objective, independent, neutral, trusted expertise and advice, which agencies are very capable of delivering, but they're going to have to separate these things out. It'd be just interesting to see how agencies, over the next year, deal with these kind of shifting sands, because I think a line really needs to be drawn. And as a marketer, you've got to decide.
And I think that's
the right model for you.
That's the challenge. So we had a transparency panel discussion last Friday, and we had some brilliant panelists discussing transparency and trust in the broader context. Bob Wootton, I think, made a brilliant concluding point at the end, and in front of an audience full of very high-profile brand marketeers, he laid down the gauntlet. He said it was their responsibility to take a leadership position on how they wanted to work with their agencies moving forward. And perhaps that will be a rallying cry and a discussion point for the ANA, the conference that you're going to be attending in a couple of weeks.
Exactly. So in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, I will be sitting in sunny Florida. Well, it's sunny London actually. It's quite nice today. At the ANA's Advertising Financial Management Conference, which is like the big, it's now like I think year 4 for me. This is where the whole media rebate discussion blew up last year. Room of 700, I think, marketing procurement leaders in the mostly US, and this is going to be one of the talking points. I hope it is in the kind of halls and corridors at the conference, because the assembled people in that room are going to be the main decision makers. They have to be the main decision makers. They cannot duck this. This is such a big decision that brands are going to have to take when it comes to how they invest in media. And I think it's going to be pretty black and white. It's going to have to be. So they need to kind of get smart on the issues and also the options, because they're two viable options. They're both contract compliant. Potentially there's nothing kind of dodgy about one or the other, but there has to be a separation. And the assembled crowd in that room are going to be people that have to make decisions eventually on this topic.
It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So we're going to do a live broadcast from.
We are.
We're going to try. Anyway.
Watch out for that. So when I'm in Florida, so in 2 weeks' time, we're going to do a media snack live from the ANA conference.
No pressure, Nadia.
And we don't know how we're going to do that. We might do that on Facebook Live or something. Anyway, we'll figure that out. We'll let you know. But we're going live.
So second up, 2 key announcements from CNBC this week. The first is that they are launching their in-house agency called Catalyst. This is the initiative of Max Raven, who's SVP of Sales at CNBC. And he's developed a team internally that won't just act as a sales facilitator for CNBC, but they're going to do a lot more. They're going to provide insights, they're going to develop content, they will create experiences for their clients. So they're bringing a lot of the stuff that perhaps traditionally would be the roles and responsibilities of agencies in-house. It's a really interesting...
it is. I mean, they've been CNBC... and other kind of international media platforms, properties, have for years been helping clients develop content and doing those direct buys and deals with some brands. But I think what Max has done, which is really interesting, he's packaged it and branded it and selling that like an agency service.
Yeah.
And it's the first that I've heard of that that kind of model, which in the scheme of all the things we've been talking about, is kind of interesting. This is Max sat on the panel last week. We were at CNBC. Very interesting discussion. They are building agency capability at a time when perhaps trust in the agency model as is perhaps under threat.
That's right.
And we were just interested to think, is that a trend now that actually media vendors and publishers, content owners, can start to really serve brands directly, not from just from a sales perspective, as you said, but from a full end-to-end agency service.
And he's repositioned it based on, refocusing from price to value. I mean, that's the reason that he's added so many more services, because he wants to add value to his clients' offering, which is great.
And what else are they doing?
And so they've launched an international show called Marketing Media Money. Which is going to be a 30-minute slot each week.
Yes.
And it is essentially designed around sort of navigating the fascination of the marketing, advertising and media industry through the lens of senior high-profile marketeers. So Keith Weed, I think, was...
we had a glimpse of that, the interview, the kick-off interview. I think it starts in May, the show. The kick-off interview was with Keith Weed, who's one of the most high-profile, celebrated marketers, CMO of Unilever. And it was quite challenging. That was the good thing, is it wasn't, it didn't give him an easy ride. It really kind of challenged him to be accountable and be articulate why they're doing the things that they're doing.
That's right.
Which was good. So, as we said with Max, we're on a bit of a ratings war now. So,
but I liked it. I mean, the bit that we saw, I thought was really provocative and insightful. So I think it's the 5th of May, 10 o'clock in the evening on CNBC. I'm going to be watching.
And so finally, just quickly, we've talked a little bit in the past about championing independent agencies, and particularly in these large shifting sands of the industry that we've been talking about just today, the opportunity and the room for great independent media agencies to flourish and succeed. And announced last week was a new global media network.
That's right.
Built up of loads of independent agencies, which is a nice idea.
So called Local Planet. This is a consortium of local independent media agencies across 40 markets, and they've got some really high-profile, agencies in there. So the Seven Stars, who we referenced last week, is the UK's offering. Horizon, which is one of the largest agencies in the US, I think is the founding agency. But across 40 markets, they've, I think, identified the best independent agencies, and together they've created this global network. In theory, it's going to be agile, it's going to be innovative. Transparency is one of the core principles, which I think will be interesting, which is great, refreshing to hear. And so with great fanfare, they've launched this week. And I think it's a great point of reference, and one that I think will be really interesting to see how they operate in some of the the big global reviews that we anticipate will kick off in the next quarter or two.
And I mean, it's a challenge, isn't it? Having its success is going to rest on the ability of these agencies, who are, I think, all privately owned. That's the bit for me that's really interesting, is that there's no shareholding. So the commercial pressures on that as an organisation are going to be very different, which means that they can probably be braver, or they can do things perhaps that a big conglomerate type group can't do, but the challenge is getting them all to work to standards and principles. That's the difference, because these are, and I've met a lot of these agencies. We used to be called Columbus, this group, and it's kind of been repackaged and rebranded. And I spoke at a conference of theirs a couple of years ago. And so I've met a lot of the principals of these agencies. And they're really interesting, great entrepreneurs. Getting a whole bunch of entrepreneurs to collaborate with consistency across markets is going to be really tricky. But if they can do that, then I think that there's a good chance. They need the right brief and the right project to prove the model. I think it's great. I think challenger right, for the network. For
I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating, and I think clients will really embrace a different point of view, and so I look forward to seeing them on one of our pitches.
Yeah, good.
You're going to mention the books? Yeah,
I'm going to mention the books. Before we go, just wanted to say thank you to our chairman, Mr. John Billett, who very kindly has given us a whole bunch of new books to add to our burgeoning ID Comms library. So look out for a slight rearrangement of the shelves, exciting, on next week's Media Snack. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
Have a good weekend.